Welcome to Jersey Bayshore Country. That's Sandy Hook, and we're going to talk to the historian of Sandy Hook, New Jersey during this program.
Hello, my name is Tom Hoffman. I am the park historian here at the Sandy Hook unit of Gateway National Recreation Area. Ever since I was a little boy, I fell into loving history. I was born and raised in New Jersey. New Jersey has a lot of history. So as a boy, I got interested in the American Revolution because a number of interesting things happened in the state during the Revolution. And from there, you get into all kinds of history, both state history, national history. And then as I was graduating college, Congress created Gateway National Recreation Area, which meant that the Army would close Fort Hancock here at Sandy Hook, New Jersey, and then the National Park Service would take over most of Sandy Hook Peninsula and became part of Gateway. So I came here and became actually the first park volunteer at Sandy Hook, and then I became a seasonal park ranger, and eventually I got career conditional status, which is a permanent status, and eventually became the park historian here. It's a beautiful place. It's a great place to work at. And if you want history, you have a big variety of both natural history and cultural history. That's the history of people using the place. And we always find new information about Sandy Hook, so it's the place to be.
Why is this lighthouse significant to our historical record?
Well, we have to go back to colonial days. You go back to the 1700s. There's 13 colonies owned by England, and the colonists built their own lighthouses for commercial reasons. It's usually merchants who needed the ships to be safely guided into a harbor so that the ship arrived safely with a cargo. The cargo is worth money. So they want that ship to arrive at a dock or a wharf, like up in New York City, safely. And the colonists didn't build many lighthouses. By the time the Revolution starts in 1775, there's only 11 lighthouses spread out in the 13 colonies. The first was Boston Lighthouse. The second one was built on Nantucket Island. Third one at the entrance to Narragansett Bay, which was Rhode Island. Fourth was in Connecticut, New London, Connecticut. Number 5 was Sandy Hook. And it's built here because Sandy Hook juts right out into lower New York Harbor where the ocean meets the harbor. So ships then as now have to, as they sail in, pass right by Sandy Hook. So Sandy Hook is low and flat. Even on a nice clear day, you really don't see Sandy Hook. But you put a lighthouse on this low flat beach, painted a high visibility color, which is white, and ships will look over here, and even on a clear day, they'll see a white tower. And that tells them, hey, that's Sandy Hook is over there, and you have to stay away from it. You don't want to sail into shallow water and get shipwrecked. So, getting back to why it's significant, out of the 11 lighthouses built, as time goes by, only one still stands, and it's the Sandy Hook Lighthouse.
Why is it still standing? Was it just constructed really well?
It was constructed very well. A man by the name of Isaac Conroe, who lived in New York City, who built buildings as a living and sold building materials. I mean, he was the Home Depot guy of his day, lived in Lower Manhattan. He was hired by the merchants of New York to build a lighthouse. His workforce did a very good job. And then, after it's built, people take care of it, and those people were keepers. They not only lighted the light at the top of the tower every night, all year long, but a secondary job is to maintain the tower. That means you paint it. If some stones are falling out, you're going to have to remortar them. The people cared for it. And it's the old saying, as the old saying goes, if you take care of it, it will last forever. And because people took care of it since 1764, because that's when they lighted it for the first time, June 11, 1764, people have cared for the structure. If you don't care for it, it's going to deteriorate and it's going to fall down on you. Also here, this was the tip of the hook when the lighthouse was brand new. It was about 500 feet from the tip, and ironically, instead of beach erosion happening here, the beach built up. The ocean waves sweep sands up the New Jersey seashore. That made Sandy Hook, and then made more sand arrive. The waves just swept it up, and the tip grew further and further away from the lighthouse. So it kind of ends up in the middle here, landlocked. It's got a lot of land around it. That helped preserve it too.
When 16,000 British troops came here and then escaped a bit later to New York City, why did they blow it up? Any idea?
This lighthouse was not blown up.
No, why wasn't it blown up by the British?
The British needed it. The British controlled the harbor, and the metropolitan area was under British control. The British had a lot of warships and a lot of transport cargo ships. They had that huge army you mentioned. You need to supply them. So they needed a big fleet to supply the army operating here in New York City and New Jersey. So they need the lighthouse as a guide in and out of the harbor at all times. It's American forces who tried to destroy the lighthouse. During the Revolution, there were several raids here. One of the first, in fact, the first where they tried to actually destroy it with cannon was June 21st, 1776, where early in the morning they tried to sneak up and discover that the British were here first. There's some British warships that sent ashore an armed guard who fought off the Americans. But according to Benjamin Tupper, the colonel leading the raid, he reported to George Washington, he said that we bombarded the tower for over an hour, but couldn't make no impression upon its walls.
So about 100 years after this was built, the shipping industry asked for another lighthouse, the Twin Lights lighthouse, to be built. Why? Why was it necessary to have a second lighthouse?
Well, actually what's going to happen is two lighthouses are going to be built. As the tip grew further and further out to the north, the government was afraid that ships they'd see the Sandy Hook light, but they might turn too quickly and go into this newer tip. So the government would build a small beacon, which is a small lighthouse, out on the tip of the hook. So that marked the actual tip for ships. That eventually got called the North Hook Beacon. And over on the bay side for ships coming from the west, like from the port of Perth Amboy, from the city of Perth Amboy, you had ships would line up on the west beacon, which stood right on the Bayshore, and line up on the small west beacon, but directly behind it was the Sandy Hook Lighthouse. So if you got both in line, you were in the channel headed towards Sandy Hook. So there were two other small lighthouses called beacons, West Beacon, North Hook Beacon.
Is the importance of lighthouses less than it was with all the GPS and electronic equipment? Is it really necessary to have this operational?
Yeah, mariners still want to see something because your electronic systems, especially GPS, they're electronical and they might go down on you. It's just like having a power outage out here and having no electricity to light the light. Well, for that, they have a backup generator to create electricity to keep the light on. But when you're on a ship, you still want to see where things are. And these still serve as markers. In fact, lighthouses' color schemes are called day marks. So ships still want to see something. You have legends here. And you know the old saying, legends are based on fact. You have the Penelope Stout story, you know, a young Dutch lady coming over from Holland back in, I believe, the 1640s, and their ship got shipwrecked off Sandy Hook. And then the people with them, they were able to walk away to try to get up to New York, which they call New Amsterdam. But this left Penelope and her husband, who is either sick or injured in the shipwreck, here at Sandy Hook. And local Native Americans fell upon them and killed the husband and severely injured Penelope. And this is all from oral tradition. This is from the Stout family history that came down through the years. Penelope didn't write anything. But later on, she did survive the attack. Local elderly Lenape nursed her back to health and brought her up to New Amsterdam. And later on, she married Richard Stout. And then they come back over here to Monmouth County, where they had a farm and they had 10 children. And they started the Stout family line with that settling here in Monmouth County. So there's a lot of descendants now. The other is Captain Kidd. A real person, William Kidd, was a sea captain. He had a very nice home fronting on the East River, had a comfortable life as a sea captain, was well-to-do. He married a woman who was a wealthy widow from Monmouth County. And then when the royal government, which is the English government, needed privateers, he signed what was called a letter of marque that made him an official privateer, not a pirate, but as a privateer, now you're sanctioned by the royal government to go raid other countries' ships and take their ships and their cargo. And that makes the royal government wealthy, and of course William Kidd and his crew gets a cut of that. But when William Kidd saw all these wealthy ships, these cargo ships that he was capturing, he said, we can make even more money if we turn to piracy. So back in the 1690s, he turned pirate, and of course when he did that, that made him a marked man. And when he was sailing back from the Indian Ocean where he'd been doing his piracy, the English authorities here were waiting for him. And it said as he came around the world on his sailing, he was burying treasure along the way. And a documented place where he did is Gardiner's Island, which is out in Long Island Sound, where that is documented. He buried some of his last treasure. The legend here is he also buried treasure here near or in an area where you could see the only pine tree growing on Sandy Hook. So for years people did dig around the pine tree back in the 1800s trying to find Captain Kidd's treasure. Nobody ever reported finding anything. But again, that's the local legend about Captain Kidd, that he buried some of his last treasure here.
Now you have looked around the spit, I'm sure, and dug about. What's the most important thing that you have personally found or discovered about Sandy Hook?
Well, I haven't dug. You don't dig.
Well, I meant euphemistically. You've sort of
looking around. Well, you can always walk the beaches here on both the bay side and the ocean side. You're going to find broken brick that's rounded down until it's very, very smooth and almost rounded. You find coal, and people. I know when I first started here, you seem to have people finding more of it than you do today. But they would say, where's this coal come from? And people don't know this, but schooners and barges used to take coal from ports like Philadelphia, where you had coal mines in Pennsylvania, and the coal would be shipped to New York City via boat. Well, these barges and schooners, they would get shipwrecked. So that meant your cargo could spill out in, offshore, off the beach. And of course the ocean waves take over and start spreading your cargo. So that's why you're going to find things like broken bricks, coal. When there's been sand replenishment projects where they pump up sand here at Sandy Hook, which they did. There was 2 big projects in the 1980s. You can find all kinds of broken china, burned remnants of things. And people wonder, well, where is this all coming from? Well, as New York City grew, the garbage barges were taking all the refuge or buildings that were demolished in New York City and dumping it literally right here in New York Harbor. It got so bad after the Civil War that the Army Corps of Engineers told all these garbage scows, you must go out into the ocean, and that meant right off Sandy Hook. So then piles of garbage were being dumped right off Sandy Hook out there. Many years later, you have a dredge company comes by, and all this is shooting down a dredge pipe and being deposited with all the wet sand, all this old garbage, which is historic artifacts, but not considered such back when it was just garbage they had to get rid of.
Well, Tom's absolutely right. You can find all kinds of relics in Sandy Hook today, you just can't dig. But let's go to Skeleton Hill Island, where we will find some relics, and we'll take a closer look. Here we go. Welcome to Treasure Island. Today's adventure, beachcombing. Okay, we're anchored in. This is where we are. I call this Treasure Island. It changes shape with the tides. Tide is going out. It should be out in another couple of hours. You can see already the water that used to be in here is slowly dissipating. Some old World War II ammo bunkers are over at the one end. Piece of blue glass. I guess you could call it sea glass. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for sea glass. We're looking for, look, here's a piece right here. I don't know if you can see it, but it's green. It's not the greatest sea glass in the world, but it'll work. These are the two pieces of sea glass that I just found within 1 minute. The water's very shallow here, and this is where sometimes you can find bottles and inkwells and other sorts of things, especially things. I found 2 inkwells in this swamp. Now, when it's low tide, there's just a trickle of water that goes through there, and you can actually walk in the mud, but you have to be careful that you're not sucked under like quicksand. One thing you don't look for on an island like this is any kind of shell. There just aren't many. Look at this. Here's another piece of sea glass. It's not. It's nice. It's blue. It's worn a little bit. It's got some markings on it, which make it interesting. So that's one we'll keep. Very beautiful out here. You can see it's low tide. This would all be underwater. In fact, the water would be, well, above here, quite frankly. Sometimes it actually, the island will disappear. A lot of pieces of bricks. You see a lot of horseshoe crabs, some dead, some living, some dying, some making love, if that's what you can call it. But you see a lot of this, a lot of man-made items, and then you see a lot of bottoms of bottles, like the one on the right, but not worth picking up. Now the object here is to find something old, preferably an old bottle that's intact. An old Heineken bottle is nothing you want to collect. Here's the bunker at the one end of, it's really not an island, but it might as well be because it's hard to get to. And across the way you can see highlands over there. I like to come here after a storm. We had a wind and a little bit of a tidal surge the other night. Really looking out in the direction of Brereton Bay off to the right at the end of Sandy Hook would be the entrance to the Atlantic Ocean. The goal is to separate all the junk from stuff that actually might be collectible, and unfortunately when you walk on this beach, especially after a storm, you see a lot of junk and you don't always know what to pick up. I like to call this a debris field. It's a little bit hard to just sort of look at it from a distance and know if there's anything worthwhile. Sometimes you just got to walk over it and look. There's an old tire, a big tire too. It's been here for 1,000,000 years, right across from our fair city. So hopefully something will wash up from Mother Nature. Maybe it'll be a bottle, a piece of glass, an old fragment, or something from Fort Hancock. You know, you get a lot of false alarms. You see something, a beautiful dark green piece of something, and you think, oh, that's it. And it turns out to be a piece of seaweed. Another hour, that little piece of water will be gone. That was filled with water at high tide. Here we are in the debris field. It's hard to see everything. You just have to look. See, here's a false alarm. This is just a piece of plastic, but it looked nice. Sometimes I walk fast, sometimes I walk slow. Sometimes I lean over to pick something up, look at it more carefully, and sometimes I don't bother. This is a recently drained culvert. Sometimes you find things in these, especially hermit crabs. sometimes you find horseshoe crabs. Sometimes I walk in this mud and sometimes I choose not to. Depends on how I feel. Well, one thing that I've realized since being out here, there are mosquitoes, so this may not be much fun for me. Maybe for you. Well, I'm in the water because of the flies. The flies were attacking me in huge swarms, so I had to get out of there. I may just stay in the water here. All right, I was out of the water for 5 seconds, and suddenly the black uglies came and attacked my legs again. Not good. Not good at all. Now here's where Treasure Island breaks. Here's where some of the water is trapped, but it's slowly coming out as the tide goes out to sea. Now we're staying out of the debris fields and staying close to the water. Look at the waves coming in. It looks like a bottle, but it is, but I'm gonna leave it down so nobody steps on it. Suddenly the sun has come out on our treasure island. It's, I don't know if it's out for just a small period of time or what, but it's peeking around the clouds. This looks like a little knife sheath. It's plastic, so it's made in Thailand, of course. This is the stuff I really like to get, because it's an old bowl, and it looks like it might be ancient, but I don't know. It could be part of a porcelain pipe system too. Here's something else. You just see stuff like this. After a while, you know, it's really just some kind of bit of a terracotta piping. We're still just walking along the shore, not really in the debris field so much anymore. Wanted to stay away from those black flies or whatever they are. Well, this is the end of the island up here. As you can see, there's an inlet that goes between the two islands. The one on the other side is Skeleton Hill Island, and Highlands is off in the distance. Here's a nice piece of sea glass. You can tell it's nice because it's kind of frosty. It's thick. It's got a nice, if you hold it up to the light, it looks nice. Got a nice color. Now, if I felt like it, I could walk out there. It's pretty shallow, and you could actually walk out for quite a ways. It's actually astounding. That's why we pulled the boat up on the other side. We had a little bit more depth in the water. We'll walk out here a little bit. Look, see here, you can tell this is not an old piece of glass, but it's there. You gotta watch out where you're walking out here. You can see the tide is swiftly moving out, but still, it's all pretty shallow. And as you walk out, sometimes you find things like, well, what's this? It looks like a piece of metal, some kind. Yeah, it's an old corroded something or other. And you can see how shallow. There's another piece of sea glass down there, but not worth picking up. It's getting a little deep in here. Oh, look what's in here. I collect these. This is a bobber. Okay, I can't tell you how many of these I found. You know, they get caught on something, and they're perfectly good. All right, it's getting kind of deep, so we're going to go back in to the shore, carefully looking as we go, whatever we may find.
I thought it would be useful to show you some of the relics that I've actually found, even though I didn't find very much during this last film. This first piece is really a fragment from an antique blue willow plate that was from the 1850s to the 1870s. Typically, the oriental motif of the traditional blue willow pattern consists of a willow tree, a bridge with 3 figures, pagodas, a boat, and 2 birds in flight. This next fragment is from a 10-inch blue and white transferware plate from about 1862. You can see that it's a blue floral transfer which covers the surface of the original plate in a geometric design. This next piece is a piece of pottery from Greenwood Pottery Company in 1868, and until about 1875, the arms of the state of New Jersey were used as the mark for the ironstone china or white granite. And in the last named year, they added the legend which appears on the subjoined mark. So the patent was on a scallop dish which was produced at that time, and the initials of the company were stamped in the body of the first table porcelain made at this factory at about the same period. Here's some tableware that I found at various locations near Sandy Hook, a fork that's sort of stuck in a piece of conglomerate, another spoon, and I tracked that spoon down. It was made by a manufacturer that made a lot of tableware for the United States military back in the 1900s, and you could tell from the mark, so that came from Fort Hancock. These next two items are two shards of china, which I have not been able to identify at this time. The other thing that I find are lots and lots of bottles. There were brothers, Robert and William Riddle, and they manufactured mineral water bottles in Philadelphia during the 1850s. And each brother would put his initial of his own first name on the other side of the hand-blown bottle at various times. So sometimes you see Robert's initial, and sometimes you see William's initial. This old milk bottle, I had to wade out into the water to find it. It's a Sheffield milk bottle from 1948, and it was found in the water near a sandbar. Here's a somewhat rare broken Coca-Cola bottle. It was bottled by the Anchor Hocking Glass Corporation, which was formed in 1937, and over the years a number of other glass plants were added, including a location in New Jersey. Now here's a bottle. It's difficult to see, but this bottle is a bottle of Red Rock Cola, which was last made in 1958 and says, "Enjoy Red Rock Cola." I also found on my adventures some interesting objects, maybe everyday objects. This first one was found in Sandy Hook. It was probably used in the military base there, Fort Hancock. This is the capture and spring mechanism for an old mouse trap that was found near Fort Hancock on Sandy Hook. Well, I guess that's all the time we have. I want to thank you for watching. Please stay tuned. Next week, we're going to have a brand new episode. We're going to talk to some interesting people. We're going to look at historic photographs, and I think you're going to have a good time. And visit JerseyBayshore.com for more information about the Jersey Bayshore and for more information about these programs. And please do visit us here.